like it? It's a custom Star Wars ship that I designed and modeled myself. I didn't know what to call it, but a viewer on Twitter suggested the Ragged Raven. I think I'll stick with that. I have repeatedly said that my favorite video game is the old PC game Star Wars TIE Fighter, mainly because it's a fantastically designed flight simulator game from a license that I love, but also because the game's story is immersive and adds new depth to the Star Wars universe. But sadly, flight simulator games have gone by the wayside since, like, the 90s onward. I mean, yeah, there's the Ace Combat series. I played the 7th entry on the PlayStation 4 and really liked it, but past that, the pickings are pretty slim. Hell, flying games in general seem to have dribbled off unless they entail flying through rings, especially since the Rogue Squadrons series fizzled out after 3 entries that all had big problems. That's why I was actually really excited for Star Wars Squadrons, a flight sim game in the vein of TIE Fighter and the rest of that classic series that modernizes the genre by working in elements of modern class-based multiplayer games. Yeah, it's a budget title, yeah, it's only about 6 hours long, and yeah, it was clearly built for the multiplayer mode that I haven't touched, but I really enjoyed Squadrons, and I think that it's a really solid single-player title. The game takes place shortly after the Battle of Endor, and the original trilogy as a whole, and the story follows 2 starfighter pilots, 1 Rebel and 1 Imperial. The Alliance is busy building its new government, the New Republic, and is working on a top-secret Project Starhawk, a huge battleship with a big-ass tractor beam designed to wreck Imperial fleets. Your Rebel pilot is part of Vanguard Squadron assigned to protect the Starhawk, while your Imperial pilot is part of Titan Squadron assigned to track down and destroy it. It's a simple but effective story as the 2 sides play cat and mouse hunting each other, and the emotional core comes in with the commanders on each side being bitter and betrayed former friends. See, in a prologue it's revealed that your Rebel commander used to be an Imperial until he was ordered to hunt down survivors of Alderaan's destruction, and he decided that killing civilians after you've already made them refugees was too evil for him, and he betrays the Empire in a really cool playable prologue that gets the immersion humming. Incidentally, I still get chills from the game's opening cutscene and how friggin' scary Darth Vader is ordering the slaughter of innocents.
Alderaan chose destruction. The survivors continue to spread dissent. Do not rest until the destruction of Alderaan is complete.
The thing I really appreciate as a fan of Star Wars is the inside look at both the Rebel Alliance and the Empire after the original trilogy. The New Republic very much wants to avoid the policies of the Empire, and a big-ass battleship with a fleet-killing tractor beam is knocking a little too close to Death Star tech for a lot of comfort, regardless of how badly they need it. The Empire, meanwhile, well, it turns out that when you build an entire government out of nepotism and then remove the one figurehead keeping everyone in line, you end up with a bunch of self-serving asshats that can't actually do anything in charge. Your missions as the Empire are sabotaged just as much by other Imperials out for themselves as they are by the Rebels, and it's both fascinating and deeply cathartic to see the Empire crumbling under its own self-defeating bullshit. Plus, the Empire's too damn arrogant to realize that they don't have the resource advantage over the Rebels anymore, leading to regular, full-blown suicide missions. Literally, your first mission as the Empire has you attacking Hosnian Prime, which is where the New Republic is building its capital. You want 4 unshielded ships with no getaway engines and a single support fighter to raid the enemy homeworld. There are easier forms of corporal punishment. I also like that because the story steers clear of involving any major Star Wars characters, you get tension out of not knowing exactly how the story is going to play. Oh, damn it! Well, they're not going to kill off the lead of Rebels, so I guess everything works out fine. Before each mission, you can get into conversations with your 4 wingmen, your commander, and a tactician for each side. You don't have to do these dialogues, but I make sure to listen to every conversation, and they don't feel like padding. The bulk of the interactions are well written, they improve the immersion, they flesh out and give more weight and drama to the story, and again, more insight into the factions. Your Rebel wingmen are an outlaw rogue with nowhere else to go, a weak Jedi keeping their head down, the daughter of an Imperial dynasty disgusted by her heritage, and a hardened but warm Clone Wars veteran, and they're all about camaraderie and friendship. Your Imperial crew are an idiot ball of irrational rage, an opportunist who's implied to only be flying because a big battle will get political power, and a cyborg who's been shot down so many times due to TIE fighters being such garbage that hatred and duty are all he's got left in his life. Seriously, Shen is creepy, less grievous badass superpower cyborg, and more I require assistance to poop cyborg. Meanwhile, your Imperial commander is spiteful and petty to the point of regularly radioing the enemy mid-battle just to mock them. Even your Imperial squad leader Gray, who comes off as the only level-headed guy you can count on, and yay, he's gay, the Empire gets diversity points, the last conversation you can have with him drops the other shoe that he is a full-blown devoted fascist.
The simple fact is this. We have the power, so we have determined what is right.
Yeah, how's that whole the people with power dictate the rules thing working out when you're down 2 Death Stars and losing a couple dozen capital ships a week? Dumbass! Now, TIE Fighter made the Empire a lot more nuanced to where it was just a bunch of ordinary people doing their jobs, running the everyday government, fighting pirates and warlords and whatnot, either separate from the rampant corruption or so immersed in propaganda that they didn't notice. But I can definitely see the hairy Territorian trying to make a game these days that paints the literal space Nazis as decent guys. Oh, and apparently one of the rebel characters is non-binary gender. It literally never comes up in game, and now that I know, I still don't care. The main campaign is broken into 14 levels, plus tutorials. The Rebel and Imperial missions are mixed together, but unlike the Transformers games, you're not immediately undoing one faction's missions as the other, to where several levels feel pointless. They worked hard to make both sides of the campaign feel satisfying, which brings up a bit of an issue that I'll get into later. The gameplay is flying around shooting things. No duh. But you're locked into a first-person perspective, and like the old X-Wing series, there are a lot of systems to manage inside your ship to keep you on your toes and prevent the action from getting repetitive. I'm honestly surprised just how many functions from the classic flight sims that they've managed to cram into a controller and still keep it mostly intuitive. Your weapons and shields don't recharge over time, so you have to constantly manage your ship's power, diverting energy out of the engines to strategically recharge one or the other at the cost of movement speed, or sod them both and pour everything into the engines for a turbo boost when things get hairy. You can also focus your shields forward or backward if you're being pursued or making runs on bigger ships. You have a targeting computer that is vital for tracking enemies and objectives so you're not flying blind, and you can manage what gets brought up on the computer with a radial menu on the left shoulder button. Pursuing and dodging requires you to constantly fiddle with your speed with the left control stick. Damn you, Rogue Squadron muscle memory on that one. And you can issue commands to your AI partners. I remember the old flight sim games had a huge list of wingman commands, but here it's pared down to literally the only 3 you ever need. Attack, defend, and medic! The partner AI seems generally competent, but it feels like the game is rigged to make your partner's hits deal less damage unless you specifically ordered them to attack the enemy in question. I get they don't want the AI to play for you, hello mutants in Manhattan, but there are key times they can't seem to tie their shoes without your intervention. If you're ever fending off bombers, you have to explicitly order them to attack specific bombers, or they'll sit around twiddling their thumbs wondering why the objective that you're escorting is on fire. The second Imperial mission, you're flying a support ship and you have to escort 3 shuttles by firing remote shields at them. Problem is, you're flying a ship that can barely turn and isn't actually equipped with any offensive weaponry. And even though you literally can't dogfight in this big-ass boat they stuck you in, your allies do such a miserable job protecting the shuttles that you still have to take on the light, fast enemies by yourself. If the game sounds overwhelming or too complicated, you get the hang of it pretty quickly, and there's a story mode difficulty like in Jedi Fallen Order that's easy enough that any casual player can do it. I beat the game on pilot difficulty, and it's challenging but never unfair. It strikes the perfect balance of being fun while still requiring a fair amount of effort on your part. Plus, if you suck, the game has infinite lives and multiple checkpoints. All you lose is a medal for beating the mission without dying, and the game's got a bug where you usually get the not dying medal anyway. My second run through the campaign, I thought I'd try bumping the difficulty up to veteran. I got 1 mission in before I learned better. See, on veteran difficulty, the game doesn't assist your aim at all and is very picky on landing hits. The enemies have jacked up health, and even with shields, it barely takes any fire to kill you. Because simulation seems like it usually means show you how sucky this would be in real life. Each faction has 4 ships. The X-Wing and TIE Fighter are your balanced ships that can be equipped for multiple roles. The A-Wing and TIE Interceptor are fast and flimsy for focusing on other fighters. The Y-Wing and TIE Bomber are the heavies with tons of health and the biggest weapons. And the U-Wing and TIE Reaper are support ships that can provide shields, cloaking, remote turrets, and whatnot to allies. This is what I mean by modern multiplayer sensibilities, because the support ships are basically the medic, spy, and engineer all rolled into one. That guy that every team needs, but kinda sucks to actually play. Just about every ship in the game has the ability to heal on the fly, between support ships firing repair droids or a self-repair that you can equip in your loadout. It feels really out of place in Star Wars, but it's a compromise for modern sensibilities that I'm willing to tolerate. Other games have gone to way more drastic measures, ignoring or making up new canon for game balance, lest we forget when the OG Battlefront 2 declared that the light unarmored interceptor V-Wing was somehow a bomber. The tricky thing about making a Star Wars flying game is that it's always been canon that Empire ships are, well, terrible. The Rebel X-Wings and Y-Wings and other wings have nice strong shields and warheads and often an onboard droid for repairs, while TIE fighters are basically just a spherical cage with some cheap guns and engines duct taped to the sides. Balancing the crappy ships with the good ones has always been a challenge, since you can't exactly give the Empire team 4 times more players to keep it realistic. The Battlefront games tend to just ignore canon and make both sides equal. The original TIE Fighter addressed the gap by just making up new Imperial ships that weren't garbage, but Squadrons has an interesting solution. Ships that don't have shields can instead use power surges to supercharge their weapons or engines for brief intervals, giving you quick kills and escapes on command when used properly. And also, the first campaign mission establishes that because you're special, you get missiles and a repair droid duct taped to your ships too. Fun fact, but when this ship debuted in Rogue One, Lucasfilm completely forgot to actually give it a name. It was EA's own Galaxy of Heroes mobile game that dubbed the ship the TIE Reaper. I believe that Lucasfilm actually came out and said, no, it's not called a TIE Reaper, but never got around to actually giving it an official name. So now it's a TIE Reaper. The one thing that pisses me off about the ship selection is that they've since updated the game with 2 new ships, the B-Wing and the TIE Defender, which are 2 of my favorites. Both are locked off only for use in the multiplayer. You don't get the option of either in the campaign. I don't know, maybe I'm spoiled by the Rogue Squadron games that let you replay levels as just about any ship, and I get they need to maintain balancing, but it still feels like a ripoff. Also, with the update adding 2 new playable ships, this budget title has kind of gotten more post-launch support than Anthem did. You know, Anthem, that big decade-spanning live service revolution that EA officially pulled the plug on last week. Sucks to suck, bro! The campaign is short, but they get a lot of variety crammed in, especially since each class has a different playstyle, and they make sure you use each ship at least once. You get a U-Wing with auto lasers firing shields at satellites that's way better than the damn Reaper level. There are multiple big ship battles and fighters and interceptors, all way bigger in scope than what the old games were capable of, and the action is fast-paced and frantic without being incomprehensible. I think my favorite missions are the 2 dedicated bomber levels. You get a Y-Wing mission nuking the ever-loving crap out of an Imperial spying post, and a TIE bomber level using cluster missiles and a big-ass laser gun to just tear up a massive dockyards level. They are crazy fun. There's only one mission in the game that I actually dislike, an Empire stage where you have to ambush rebels by shooting a bunch of floating reactor cores to make them explode as their ships pass by. And you have to be super precise, because if you miss the timing on a single core, you pretty much immediately fail the level. Although I suspect that the reason I hated this level is because you're given the option of flying either as a Reaper or a bomber. And my dumb ass picked the Reaper for its shielding, whereas not only does the bomber have the Kamehameha laser so that you don't have to nail the timing on the cores, but it can actually turn worth a damn! You're not tediously trying to lurch yourself 180 degrees only to find that you don't have line of sight on the one core that you have 2 seconds to shoot before you failed the mission! Man, I just have a hate boner for this ship. There are multiple points in the story where they tried to do that flying into the Death Star thing. You head into a big ship, attack the core, and blast out chased by a fireball. Again, unlimited lives, and I shouldn't care, but for how easy it is to crash into everything in sight and die instantly, these moments that are supposed to feel epic kinda just become annoying, especially if they screw you out of the not dying medal. In fact, the grand finale of the final level, you race through the debris of an exploding moon, kept crashing and dying out of nowhere. Like, what the hell? I try not to dip into spoilers for games that are still new, you know, unless they suck nards like Dollhouse, and judging by the fact that less than 7% of players even bother beating the game above the gimme difficulty, I doubt anyone cares, but I don't get why the Imperial Squad gets a happy ending. The game tries to structure it so that both sides get a satisfying conclusion, but they spent the entire game establishing that the Empire are very unambiguously the villains. Why does the squad that spent 2 consecutive missions slaughtering civilians and laughing about it not end the game by getting their faces pounded in? I mean, this isn't like Team Cap, Team Iron Man, where both sides are good and have a point, or Team Edward, Team Jacob, where both sides you want to die. You spend the entire game hammering one side as being psychotic, petty tyrants, and they still get to sort of win? Apparently, if you've read the Aftermath novels, you have added context that Titan Squadron just declared victory and then ran away not having actually done anything. But it shouldn't take homework to understand the ending! There are several other options on the main menu past the main campaign that are all blacked out unless you're playing online. You can customize your ships and pilots' appearances with like 2 options unless you play online. You can change the default loadouts that your ships have. Almost all the weapons and equipment are locked unless you play online, but if you dig long enough, you actually find another mode that you can play solo, the game's Fleet Battles multiplayer mode against bots. The way this mode works is the players are split into teams of 5, and each side has a capital ship and 2 frigates. A support gunship will spawn for 1 team at a time, so both sides take it in turns attacking and defending. The side that blows up all the other capital ships first wins. There are 6 or so maps with a good variety of terrain. You can change between all your faction ships at will. There are a variety of objectives that are constantly being cycled through, and it's a pretty large scale and satisfying battle. It's not bad, but at the end of the day, it's still online multiplayer. One mission that you're expected to play over and over, and your lives will almost universally end by just getting shot and killed from off-screen. Though admittedly, the Star Wars ships with actual shields and repair droids can actually take a hit or two, unlike most online shooters. But the real draw of this mode is that I actually get to fly those B-Wings and TIE Defenders that were hoarded away from the solo players! Ha! The TIE Defender is actually really cool, kind of midway between the X-Wing and Y-Wing on the durability and firepower, carries a bunch of missiles and has 6 guns. It's awesome! I'd appreciate it if the game quit glitching out to give my Imperial pilot a girl's voice, though.
You see it? Take it out. I think they've locked on. Here comes a missile.
And then there's the B-Wing, which can barely move, barely turn, and has no anti-fighter missiles whatsoever in its base loadout. It's basically just a gun you aim at capital ships and a walking bullseye. Okay, I was wrong. The multiplayer dudes can keep this ship to themselves. And this has always bugged the crap out of me. I've played like 4 different games where you fly a B-Wing. I don't think any 2 of them agree on where the ship's guns are placed, let alone how the thing flies. Hell, flip a coin what side of the ship they even put the cockpit on. Also, I tried spectating the AIs between spawns. And guys, if you're crashing and getting stuck on purpose to make me feel like a better pilot, I'd rather you not. It's just patronizing. Star Wars Squadrons is a really fun video game, and a definite step in the right direction for tie-in games to this franchise. The story is short, and the emphasis is clearly on the multiplayer, but the solo campaign had a lot of clear effort put into it, and it doesn't feel tacked on like other multiplayer games that EA has made. And while Squadrons is a lot smaller scale than I would have wished for, this is pretty much exactly what I was looking for in a Star Wars game, and I'm very happy with it. It's probably for the best, too, because if I had my way, the game would have blown all its budget adding a crapload of ships that nobody would ever use. Start with the obvious ones like the Millennium Falcon and the Slave One, move on to the big fan favorites like the Outrider, the Ghost, and the Razor Crest, and then I'd get into all the obscure shit nobody cares about but me, like the Moldy Crow, the Shadowcaster, the Skirk Bomber, the Fang Fighter, the E-Wing, the K-Wing, the V-Wing, the other V-Wing, the Mantis, the TIE Striker, the TIE Phantom, TIE Hunter, TIE Advance, the other TIE Advance, TIE Punisher, TIE Aggressor, TIE Raptor, TIE Silencer, TIE Whisper, the Assault Gunboat, the Missile Boat, a Lambda Shuttle, the Star Viper, the Punishing One, the Xanadu Blood, the Mist Hunter, the Houndstooth, the Naboo Starfighter, the Jedi Starfighter, the Jedi Interceptor, the Scimitar, the Vulture Droid, the Hyena Droid, the Tri-Fighter Droid, the ARC-170, the Torrent Fighter, the Soulless One, the Umbaran Starfighter, the Gauntlet Starfighter. Depending on how loose we're going, the Low-Altitude Assault Transport Infantry Gunship is a must. And then as thanks for all my hard work, throw in the Ragged Raven.